Welcome back, everyone, to Dynamic Character Productions. We are recapping episodes 9, 10, and the finale of Survivor Sahara Dunes, our fourth mini coming to an end. And why not bookend it with my production member who I had at the beginning of this season? Welcome back, Greg. What did you think about the ending of Sahara Dunes?
I really enjoyed it. It really kept me guessing the whole time. I thought the end game was really strong. It was really cool to see the players really come into their own and really trying to figure out how they needed to get to the end and who they thought that they could beat. I think we got to see a lot more of their personality as the numbers dwindled down, which was great to see. I think it was a strong final six. And you could say it was a strong final five. It was a strong final four with a really tough challenge there at the end. And I thought that actually the final three was maybe controversial, but I think it was one of the most impressive final threes that we've had in one of our seasons. Just because from a viewer's perspective, I kind of thought that really any of them could have taken it. And it really just came down to the jury questioning and kind of the jury's perception of their game. So it kept me guessing the whole time, and I thought it was really exciting.
Yeah, I agree with you with so many points there, Greg. I was looking at all this because while I am part of production, I know what happened. I knew what was happening that day. I was not there live to see everything. So it's nice getting this footage to see for the first time for me. And I had that same mindset. We got to that final three, and I was thinking it could really go either way with each of them. Each of them had a case to win the game, and we'll get to it when we get to the part of the final tribal council and announcing who won. But I believe this particular jury thought for the one who won, that was the story that they most appreciated, or for whatever reasoning that they all had, that's the path that it led to, which led to, spoiler alert, if you don't want to be spoiled right now, why didn't you watch the episodes? Stop, pause this, and go watch the episodes that are all on our YouTube channel. Very easy to navigate. We have them in playlists, so easy to maneuver. And then come back here. And then you can talk about how Alanis is the winner in a 6-1-0 vote. Youngest person to win in DCP history currently. I don't want to be fact checked on that. I'm just going to hope that I'm right.
I think that's true. I'm thinking back. I think that's true.
Right. Okay, good. But we can't get there unless we talk about all the episodes. We're going to start with episode 9. I'm still here. That's what matters. We jump straight into final six immunity. And it's a 5x5 grid that they're each doing individually. And you have 5 minutes to memorize and replicate a 5x5 grid. And you have 20 seconds for the initial check. And then for each time you check, you can then go back and review 5 seconds until you time out or you complete it correctly. And we're going to go results first, but then we'll talk about what was going on during the challenge. So results first, the 3 ladies all time out. It's not an easy challenge. There's things that look very similar, things that you may need to flip. They get caught up with some of them. None of them complete it. All the guys do complete it. And we do eventually have our winner in Dennie winning the immunity with a 3 minute and 13 seconds. Very impressive. It wasn't easy to tell which person did it the quickest because of we speeded up a little bit, but I liked that because it sort of kept it in suspense of who actually won. They all did very well. But what's more important here is what's going on in between while everyone's competing. Everyone else, or at least 4 people at any given time, are in this breakout room or in the main room. They're free to talk.
Yeah, I actually really liked that game mechanic. That I don't know who came up with that idea on production, but I thought it was actually a really cool way to play out this round, especially when you're right at the end. I know sometimes we like to have a round where it's sped up, but this was a really great way to do it where we didn't tell anyone, we didn't tell the players what was going on, that while the challenges was going on, that was your only time to scramble. We jumped right into tribal council once the winner was announced, and they were shocked by it. But it did seem like they used the opportunity to talk about the past vote, figuring out where the votes landed between Jon and Kylie, and that seemed to help Kylie decide where she wanted the vote to go. on the challenge, I thought like Danny crushed that. That was really impressive work on his part, especially because at this point, what they've been playing probably for 10 hours,
Yeah.
somewhere around there. Like it's been a long day. And the mental challenge, I think, especially are just like they're tough because you've just been sitting in front of your computer all day. And it was really impressive to see him pull that out. And that was, I think, his first immunity win. So that was cool for him. But yeah, the game mechanic of having the 4 other people in the room being the only people you could talk to scramble with at any given point was really interesting. And I think it clearly gave Kylie the indication that the votes on her were Victoria and Michael. And then when it came down to it at tribal council, no one was really willing to say a name. And she spoke up and she was like, look, 2 people voted for me. I'm not going to vote for the people who tried to save me the last round. So it's going to be Victoria or Michael. And then, there was some, some veiled conversation of, we've said this person's name before and everything. And it just, everyone kind of like picked up on it really quickly. Like Alanis picked up on it easily. I think Erik picked up on it right away. And it was really impressive to see how that vote came together out of thin air, it seemed like.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting seeing it that way and not getting confessionals, not getting like their own individual insight on what was happening.
Yeah.
I definitely enjoyed this mechanic. It's sort of unfortunate that it was in a spot where you had like a clear foursome at the moment that were in a round like that. You're not really going to splinter off from each other yet. So it makes it, okay, Michael or Victoria, neither of them win. But a lot of them keep saying like, oh, Victoria's smart. She's likable. She may have people on that jury that's already going to vote for her, and more importantly, she could be taking a spot from one of us if she's there at final 3, because none of them see her as a threat. And I think this is sort of something that backfires ultimately for Erik and Kylie on perception. From their perception and like how they just speak out is these people aren't threats, these people are threats. But we see at the end, both of them get to the end, neither of them win. Yep. The perception's different in terms of that jury. But ultimately, we do see Victoria go here. Victoria knew it was coming at that point, and there's not really much else you can do there because you can throw anything out there, but you're 4 against 2. You sort of need Michael, so you can't really throw Michael under the bus here.
Right. And I thought I was really impressed by Victoria's game. She came in as a complete new player. She, I think, was it was fun to watch her learn the game as the game was happening, and like really kind of understand like where the move should be made. I'm looking at our wiki and it looks like she voted correctly the entire time until she was voted out, save for the the rock draw vote, but that was you can't really say one way or the other what was right or wrong.
Correct.
So she played a great strategic game and a great social game, so that she was always in the know. And I feel like people underestimated that. So I feel like they probably got out the right person, because I think she could have had some pull at the end. I feel like Victoria and Alanis were playing kind of similar games without anyone realizing it. So to Alanis's credit, she got out the person that she wanted to get out, and there was the whole crew there to do that with, because there was no scramble time to really figure that out. I wonder, I'm curious about your opinion on this, Alex, is if there was some time to scramble, do you think that the vote would have been different?
I ultimately don't believe it would be different. They've been saying Victoria's name for a few rounds now. Basically, ever since Robbie was voted out, they've been saying Victoria's name, but they couldn't get her out the first time because her and Alanis won the dual immunity together when both of them were potential names. But ultimately, she would have been the one who went because they saw her as smarter, or like not, I guess maybe not as someone they could control as much as they think they could with Alanis. Yep. Next round, obviously, is Jon and Kylie fracture.
Yep.
But I think that's ultimately what upends Victoria's game. If Jon survives there, he's pulling in Victoria. And I think the game is dramatically different in terms of that final 6 outcome. We could potentially saw rocks. We could potentially saw a lot of things there. But, she played a good game. She was able to get at least one person, and ultimately it was Jon as the main point of contact to keep her in the loop, keep her in the know. From her perspective, I just know from conversations with her, the reason why she votes for Alanis there is because when not a lot of people were really talking game with Victoria, but when they would keep saying that Alanis was the one bringing her name up, or like Alanis brings up this name, Alanis brings up that name. So in her mind, Alanis is the person who upended her game here.
Yeah.
And which again, it's good to have someone that you can throw blame on, even if it's a fake throwing blame on. Because Alanis more so says it because it's like, oh, it's either her or me. So I'm going to throw Victoria's name out because, of course, I'm going to throw out her name and not mine.
Right.
But you get to the end game, Victoria's a vote for Alanis at this point because she thinks Alanis is the one controlling it.
Exactly. Everyone used Alanis throughout the game as being like, oh, Alanis said your name. So like, that's what we went with. And then they brought her to the end. And from the jury's perspective, they're like, oh crap, like Alanis is the one who's trying to get me out here. So,
and I'm not saying that's for everybody, but I
Sure.
at least like that's my perception on Victoria's mindset for her vote ultimately at the end for Alanis. But that's the end of her game. She is the 9th person voted out, ends up in 6th place.
Yep.
Very good game from her, but we have to move forward. It's now episode 10. I'm shaking. Which I almost feel like should have been the title for
the next
episode
one,
11. But I digress.
Yeah.
What's important to also highlight there is Final 6 was the time and the only opportunity where Erik could have played his legacy advantage. And I love getting the context from him at the beginning of the episode going, once I knew for sure where the votes were going just from the conversations throughout that challenge, I knew it was perfect. I didn't need to bring it up, didn't need to use it, because if I did, I would have had to win out. Yep. Because there's just been so much talk about the advantage. If that advantage ever decided to perk its head up, everyone would turn on me because why didn't you tell us?
You immediately get put on the radar. Then you're the person who had found it. Yeah, you're right. Like you had withheld that all season. It could be seen as being a flashy move. I think he wound up not needing to use it because his intended target was going home, and he wasn't really at risk there. So at the time, as I'm watching it, I was like, this is a really great move to not play it. And most times you think that it's like playing the advantage or playing your idol or whatever it is what that cool flashy move is going to be. And watching it, like in the moment, I was like, that's really impressive. And that's really cool that he was able to think about that in the moment, to know that it could have put a target on him and it could have made it a harder path for him to get to the end. I think maybe ultimately sitting at the end, the jury would have liked to have seen something a little bit flashier, to give Erik a better chance at getting their vote. So even though I thought it was a really cerebral play, it's not always the one that the jury wants to see. And that's really what it comes down to kind of at the end.
Yeah, because like we do see Alanis sort of like throw it back in Erik's face, like, well, you didn't have any votes cast against you, and you didn't have to use your advantage because no one saw you as a threat. Yeah. So you didn't do it. Like, and that's a good pitch. I don't agree with it, but it was a good pitch to throw out there to a jury that you already have. Like, I'm assuming Alanis had an idea that there's at least some people based off how the questions are going that I have some people in my corner. Let me figure out more ways to push it forward for me. And so like that was a brilliant thing for her to say there. I would have been of the mind of that would have led me more towards voting for Erik, because I'm not someone who necessarily needs the big flashy game as long as you can explain your subtle game.
Yep.
And like that was the game that all these people are playing, where we're going to find an alliance. We're going to try to figure out who's that majority for this round. It was a pretty much the main majority for most of the game, but you're like going in, figuring out as a group, get the job done without anyone really, because we do have some blind sides here, but you get through it clean for the most part and you move forward. And is it the flashy game that like the casual viewer wants to see? No, but it's for people that are more strategic minded and like looking for the nuance of game in terms of their social strategic acumen. This is a season for you to watch, because it gives you the personality of the character and it gives you the strategy and like just to figure out where's the best place for me. Right. But we are going to move on to the immunity challenge, which is the Q&A, and it's all about answering questions based off the questions that you answered in the application. But what I loved here was the flashback to Danny. It was Danny, Kylie.
I did like that.
Robbie,
Alanis,
Alanis, and Maddie
Maddie.
were all exchanging information because Danny just like offhand goes like, "Do you think that application is gonna like be like a quiz sometime?" Because I think Danny watched. I want to say he watched Ricky
That's
before
what I think. 'Cause
playing.
he mentioned at some point that the season he watched had a final two, and so then Ricky is what kind of I was like, oh, it was probably that one. I guess it could have been Exile maybe,
But I love that. I love seeing someone who actually went back, watched a season, and so to have like an idea of, oh, these are certain things that could show up. Let me prepare for it, and then all of them just like openly discussing. Did it help any of them? Those
No.
five or those three? No, because we only see Michael, like sort of kick ass at this, like getting exact numbers.
I was gonna say he was getting answers right that I was like, how the hell is he guessing this? But it was good. It was impressive.
As impressive as it was, and it definitely saved him because I do think ultimately if he didn't win, that those four probably would have stuck together one more time. It would have been a lot more interesting if someone else won, like a Kylie or an Alanis, and they still take out Danny. I think would have been very interesting to see.
Agree.
But I think this win also upped Michael's. It would have, for me, it would have upped his threat level because you do this so late, and it's about things, understanding the people that you played with, essentially. And how they think.
It was his second immunity win too.
Yeah, it's second immunity win, but I almost think this one's a bigger deal because it shows he understands this jury, or like the majority of people who have played. So if we bring him to the end, he understands them better than maybe we do.
It definitely revealed him to be probably smarter than, or just kind of more socially aware than what people expected. Because I'm looking at the wiki, and there was a couple of rounds where he didn't vote correctly. Like two of them, right at the Jordyn vote and the Jon vote, he didn't vote the right way. And so I think maybe people kind of underestimated him a little bit because of that. But yeah, no, it was a great win for him. I certainly feel for Danny because I've been in a similar situation where you're an alliance of four and that fifth person wins and you get fifth place. But props to Michael. He really pulled that out. And I thought this round was maybe one of my favorite rounds of watching everyone hop around and really trying to figure out like who is going home. And they're sitting in groups of three and they're trying to figure out who's the other person. And it's like there's only one other person at that point who you can vote for, because I think there was a group, maybe it was the girls and Danny, and they're trying to figure out who to go for, and like Erik is the only other option at that point.
Right.
But then immediately you see a different group of three, and then Alanis is the only other option, and a different group of three, and Danny's the only other option. It seems like Kylie was maybe the only one who felt the most safe this round. I don't know if you kind of picked that up too. But I was kind of sitting there like, who's going to go home here? Like it could be Danny, Erik, it could be Alanis. Like all of them had their names being tossed out there in different groups of three, and it was really like which group is going to pull through on it.
It's very interesting. It's something that I can't wait to hear the exits for these final six people, because there's just something about going through all like the reasoning of like, why was it that Kylie felt so safe here, or like why were they not really actively considering her as like someone to go home? Because we hear at the very beginning of the episode Michael go, Kylie's running this, like that's my perception, she's running this game at that moment, at least which is sort of fun to watch because you like hear these people's perception of Kylie in the game, and then you get to the end, she's a 0 vote finalist, right? So what happened there, maybe she was too good socially with the people that she was social with, that what they felt more burned by her by getting voted out by her. Whereas you have Michael, and we talk, and this whole episode is sort of like highlighting both Michael's game and Danny's game. Michael's game is, he's sort of voting how he wants to vote, but also there's some strategy to it because there's people that went out that he didn't want to say, like, I actively voted them out of the game. He could bring that up at the end. Like that shows loyalty to the people that went out. You maybe get docked points for not like having control, but you could gain favor because you stuck to your guns, you stuck to what you believed in with the people that you trusted, and you weren't going to be someone who put their name down just because even though you knew that they were going. And we see that in a lot of games, even in games that you have played in on Exile Island, like people know where the vote is, but sometimes they still decide to vote wrong for their own purposes.
For sure. Absolutely. And a couple other interesting things I thought about this vote. One, we got another instance. I know we said earlier Danny had watched back a season and he kind of figured out final two versus final three, and he kind of knew that the jury questioning might come into play, or like the Q&A. We also heard Erik. He was like, I know that there's going to be like, he knew / assumed that there'd be a wall sit coming up because of his past experience having watched and experienced other games. So he was like, Danny is a jacked player. Like, he's a very athletic guy. Like, he could easily do well in a wall sit, which I kind of thought was funny because as Erik's sitting there, you could see like his arms are kind of like bulging out of his own sleeve, and he's a very physical person as well. So it's funny that he was able to like really push that physical threat level onto Danny, and then which clearly wound up helping him later on. But so I thought that was really interesting that he was able to push that. But during this vote also became a pretty important one for the jury of saying like who spearheaded Danny's boot, like who got him out. And Alanis took credit for it herself, and then Erik kind of took his own credit for it, and Kylie actually gave more of the credit, it seemed like, to Erik there at the end. And watching it back, it's almost like both things can be true, because there's a conversation with Kylie and Alanis, and they're trying to, it's just the two of them. And they're like, oh, what are we doing? What are we doing? And Alanis is the one that speaks up, and she was like, I think we should go for Danny. And then the same thing, there's a conversation between Erik and Kylie, and Erik's the one very vocally being like, it's got to be Danny. It's got to be Danny. So it's like both of them are individually spearheading it. And maybe from Kylie's perspective, like Erik was just the louder voice in the room there or something. But it's really interesting to see how the players are trying to get out a big threat. And I do believe that Danny was, and then trying to claim credit for it at the end, because it was something that, may have swayed the jury.
Well, that is very true. And we'll get to like that specific question when we get to final tribal, because I'm of a mind that that question is very much, at least how I feel it was used here, a trap question. Yeah. And I'll talk more about that when we get there. Sure. But we also know like Michael actually doesn't really want Danny to go, because he feels in the final four of him, Danny, Erik, and Kylie, he gets the final three. Like if he truly thinks they're of the mind that they would take one of each other out to get to the end, because they've all played together, they all played too similar of a game. Why would you bring everyone to the end? Danny's of the mind of just like, I think it would be perfect. Like for me, it doesn't really matter who we get to the end. I would love to get to the end though with Erik and Kylie, because I've worked this game with them. But I also think I could probably articulate the game the best of the three of us and win. So, and then you hear the perspective of everyone else, because like Danny is quieter throughout this season. Like he's very, I find him very calculated with what he decides to say. He's very cagey. He doesn't want to be the person who gives the name, but if you give the name, he'll give you good logic behind why that's good or bad for his perspective. So he's inoffensive. He is good at challenges. He's likable and can speak well. All things that are dangerous if you're looking at Final Tribal Council, because it doesn't matter how good of a game you can play as long as you are able to sell it. That's all you need to do.
And in Danny's mind, it seemed like he really wanted to go to the end with people that he had been working with for the entire merge and even at the swap. So I think that people could have looked on that very favorably if they view him as kind of being the leader of that group, or maybe the one that stood out the most. So I mean, I thought that Danny's mindset and his and the gameplay that he was pursuing, I thought was really smart.
It was very smart. Ultimately, he does have a blind spot though, and I would say you maybe had a little bit of it yourself in your game where you have this 10 alliance, but you also feel like in some ways or another you feel like you're playing, like without being cocky about it, you're playing the best of the group. So you're like, I don't care if I get to the end with them, because I think I'm still going to be good enough to win. So I would rather go with the people that I'm working with instead of betraying all of them. And I think it was a similar mindset that Danny had, because he says it in his final words that I just decided to put too much trust in them and it backfired on me. And maybe I shouldn't have.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And it was his ultimate downfall, but Danny, I thought was a really great character to have on the season. He was a really good player. He's someone that I would love to see play again, because I think that I feel like he's someone who could get far in any season that he plays. And it's just about like, can he make the right move at the right time to really push himself to that next level? Because he's so close. He's right there. He's really fun to watch, really fun to watch how he analyzes the game. And I agree with what you said. He was not going to be the one throwing out names all the time, but he is like really logical in his reasonings for wanting people out or wanting people to stay around. He was really fun to watch this season.
Yep, but he gets blindsided 4-1. Yep. Didn't realize it. He felt someone would give a name or tell him at least if he was gonna be the one going, or that his name was out there, but never heard it because he was never in a room where they would say it, which was good gameplay on the other 4. He goes out in 5th place, is the 10th person voted out of this game. I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I would love to see him play again. It's sort of my feeling about this cast in general is there's so many of them that I'm rewatching these episodes. I watched them twice before I podcast about them, and it's not just as a character, but as players, there's so much that I feel we could get out of this cast 100%. In future seasons. Yep. So as long as they want to play.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. This was a really special cast. And I don't know if I could be completely honest. I just didn't know where everything would fall at the very beginning of the season, just because there are so many new players. So many of these people had never even played a game before. Like they didn't know what was going on. So like I mentioned with Victoria kind of like figuring out as she went along, and she really did figure it out. Like everyone else was doing the same thing. And it was just really cool to watch people do that. Figure out what this org world can be like and playing these games. It's just like, it's exciting. It's refreshing. So this would be a really fun cast to see who could come back and improve upon their game.
Right. Like I think of our final 10, or like everyone in the jury, I think only Robbie is someone who had some sense of like org experience.
I think that's right.
And so it's just truly incredible to get to watch and have the opportunity to watch all these people who in one way or another are Survivor fans, but have never actively put their thoughts and like strategy for it into it, and see how they all come out. We have a final 3 of all newbies. We have a final 4 of all newbies, final 5, final 6, final 7. It's truly fun because it sort of allows more freedom, especially in terms of characters. Like, because you're going to get a character from people who played an org, but there's some people, they don't know like the intricacies, like quote unquote, like what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. And so it allows a little more chaos to come in, a little more like that Jon round where he goes out is peak television for me. Great. Him and Kylie both scrambling and trying to gather troops and figure out how they survive and the other one fails, and see Jon fail and like hoisted by like his own petard of like, I want to make the move, but then everyone turns around and makes the move him. And this episode, the Danny blindside, but like Danny has no idea, but the viewer knows Danny's going. And that's the type of Survivor I love. So like kudos on the editing, McKenna, because that's classic Survivor.
It was very old school, and I it was really fun to watch. Really, just like, it's exciting.
It's true.
It's exciting, but not in the way that Survivor now thinks exciting is exciting, where it's like where the viewer is completely blindsided and is like, I didn't even know their name was out there, kind of thing. It's like you get to actually watch it happen and watch the reason behind it, and the only person that doesn't know that it's happening is the person that goes home, especially for these last couple, since they were unanimous votes.
And that's majority of this game outside like the Robbie vote and the Jon vote, and I guess like the rock draw. Almost all the votes in the post merge were a solid majority, and then like 1 or 2 votes against the other. So even with these voting blocks, they all figured out a way where it was a clear picture for the most part of who was going home each round, except the Jon vote. Yeah, that one was more up in the air.
That's what could have changed the game completely, like you had mentioned earlier. Yeah,
but there's an art to telling a story where you know the end, but you still want to go through it to understand how do you get there. Like Danny's going, why? And you see why, as everyone is very good at explaining Danny's game and being like, well, that's why he's a threat. He needs to go. And during all that, you get some talk about final threes, final twos, but it all comes down to episode 11, the finale. It's called I'm Gonna Throw Up because it's the final four immunity and is the final immunity. And in true DCP fashion, every single mini has had it. It's but on a hard idol. You're doing a wall sit. You got to earn your spot physically to get a chance to plead your case in front of the jury. And Erik may have learned a thing or two from Brett and and wins this. Even though I don't think Erik was drinking wine, so
no, I don't think he was drinking wine. That's why he probably got to last longer than what Brett went. I think what season 3 was somewhere in like the 3-minute 30-second mark. This one was, I believe, over 5 minutes, which is insane. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. These people have been playing for so long, and they still want, like, Michael and Erik still wind up putting on an absolute showdown. Michael in his skinny jeans, his shaking legs the entire time. I was so absolutely impressed with Michael. I thought the entire time, I was like, Michael is about to win this challenge in his skinny jeans, and it would have been really exciting. But Erik just kept holding on. He mentioned that he heard commentary that Michael was looking shaky, so he was like, just maybe that gave him that extra burst of adrenaline to just be like, come on, hold on to it. So yeah, that was a really great battle. And Alanis, I thought held her own too, and in any other season she could have won it. And and
well, she sort of gets screwed by her dog.
I know, yeah, she does get screwed by her dog. That's keep your pets away. Like Victoria had the same problem with her cat.
Oh, that also cracked me up. She's trying to talk strategy, and then her cat's like, I want to throw my butt in here.
So keep your pets away when you're playing orcs.
Yeah, absolutely. But Michael fought, and I give him all the kudos there, because he knew, and Erik knew, like, how much they needed to win this to secure their spot. Because it pretty much comes down to, okay, Erik's safe.
Yep.
Is it going to be Kylie? Is it going to be Alanis? Is it going to be Michael?
Yep.
And ultimately, and I think this is, again, another good, like, she doesn't get Michael's vote, but I think Alanis, deserves some credit to make sure it wasn't her by just, like, constantly throwing this idea, even though. So the idea comes of the three of them, of Alanis, Kylie, and Erik, have all have blood on their hands, because they're responsible for Danny going out. They're going to be responsible for Michael going out. They're responsible for getting, or those two are responsible for getting Robbie out.
I mean, the three of
she's responsible for Victoria going out. Like, basically everyone from Robbie on, it's like the blood's on their hands. Even though I would argue, and this isn't saying a bad or a good thing, it's just observation. Like, I don't feel Alanis truly spearheaded the votes, so I don't think, from a jury's perception of her, she has nearly as much blood on her hands as Erik and Kylie do, because they had to betray their own alliances. They had to backstab original tribal lines. Like, they did that for their game, whereas she played loyal at first, loses her allies in Maddie and Robbie, and then decides she has to adapt. Gets, luckily enough, like, she takes what Danny wanted Jordyn's spot to be, with him, Kylie, and Erik. Then gets in there. It's now like, in people's minds, like a tag along to it, but still part of the conversation. But she doesn't nearly have as much blood, but she's pitching to them as if she does. And when you're pitching that you have as much blood on them, and Erik and Kylie's perception of you is, well, okay, but we also don't see you as a threat, there's more reason to bring you now, because why would, if you have blood on your hands and we don't see you as a threat, why would other people vote for you? Whereas she then pitches Michael as, he purposely didn't vote people out. He played a clean game. Like, people aren't going to be mad at Michael at the end, because who did he truly betray? He didn't. Like, he played a clean game. He was a little flip-floppy with his votes, but he won some immunities. People like him. I didn't hear anyone say, like, oh, and he did very well on the quiz that shows that he understands the jury. But
I thought Alanis played this really, really smart. it seemed pretty clear that Erik and Kylie weren't going to break up. They had been a duo for a really long time. They'd always spoken highly of each other to other people. So I think Alanis was really smart to know, like, all right, like no point in trying to put out really Erik or Kylie's name. So like, let's more seriously go after Michael here. And I think she really argued her case really well. And you know, I thought Michael's reasoning for wanting to vote for Kylie was also pretty smart in the moment, because she was someone who I think at the time was really like the loudest strategic voice of trying to like control some of the votes leading up to this. So I understood why Michael wanted to put the vote on Kylie.
Yep.
But I thought Alanis really played it really smartly with Erik and Kylie, and kind of almost, I almost don't want to say it's like downplaying her own game. She's almost like up playing her own game to, like you said, kind of like also like join the two of them, being like, oh, I backstabbed everyone too. I did it all too. Even though I think she knew in her mind, she was like, no, like I voted people out, but I never had these kind of relationships with them to the position that they would consider it a betrayal from my point, like from their point of view.
Right. Because like you heard a lot of people, especially like Michael, like when they're talking about Victoria, talking about Alonso, like, I don't know them that well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know a lot about them, but like everyone, like outside of that, everyone's other reactions to them are like, but I like them.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with juries. And if people are going to say like, oh, it's an incorrect vote or correct vote, there's no such thing as an incorrect or correct vote in a jury. Obviously, all of us are going to have our own biases there with what we believe how a jury should vote. But ultimately, each juror who's ever voted in a game of Survivor or Survivor org has that whatever criteria they want, because it's their vote ultimately. And sometimes you'll see people vote not because of the gameplay, but just I liked this person better.
Yeah.
So
and
I'm putting my vote for them.
Yeah, I feel really strongly about that. I don't believe in bitter juries. If a jury wants to be bitter or vote or not vote for someone for whatever reason, that is absolutely their prerogative. And it's the player's role and job to understand that based on the people that they've met and they've been playing with, to understand how they may vote and who you are going to sit next to and how you can argue your game against them or, you know, for yourself or whatever it is. So yeah, fully agree. I mean, I don't think a jury could ever get a vote wrong.
Well, I can argue that people actively choose to make like the quote unquote the wrong decision. Like I've had a personal experience in a game I played where someone didn't vote for me because I quote unquote betrayed their trust in a beginning alliance that they made, and then I was immediately removed from that alliance. I ultimately blindsided them. And they're like, well, I'm never going to vote for you because you betrayed me, even though they betrayed me first.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's faulty logic, but you ultimately, there's no
requirement for logic in these games.
Exactly. There's no requirement.
It sucks for people who are logical people. And like, that's how you play. And that's what you expect other people to play and vote as, but you know, there's just no requirement for it. You can be a character, you could be the logical player, you could be whatever. And, you know, it's just, it's how everything falls.
Yeah. And I don't know the reasoning that every juror has for this vote, but I do know that they didn't just vote because I don't believe they voted for certain people to be like, in spite of the other two.
Yeah.
I believe people voted for, Michael votes for Erik at the end and he has his reasons. And the 6 people who voted for Alliance all had different reasons for why they ultimately chose them. And it's all based, like, I know I'm a broken record saying this, it's all about perception. It's all about what they believe. It's all about what you try to sell and if they believe what you're selling. But getting back to the main track, we do see Michael go here in 4th place in a 3-1 vote. He votes for Kylie. The rest vote for him. 4th place, 11th person voted out. I very much liked Michael on our computer screens, not our big screens, unless you stream them onto your big screen. He's also someone who I would enjoy see play again. It's like, it's a low-key game. It's not flashy, but I like his thought process. He's able to explain himself well in his confessionals with where his head's at. And more importantly, I feel he always has an understanding of positioning.
Yeah.
He knows, like, he wanted Alanis out of 5, but he's like, as much as I would like that, and I think I could get Danny, I don't believe the other 3 will bite, or the other 2 will bite. So while he doesn't have active control of the game, I think it's almost just as valuable, or maybe just like a little less valuable, but still key to understand what your power is amongst this group, what your ability to sway someone is. Because maybe you can't sway them now, but maybe you get to the end and you're able to sway the vote.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree. Michael is definitely someone that I think it'd be fun to watch play again. And we might just be so lucky. I'll leave it at that.
I would love to see it. But that leads us to final tribal council. Everyone gives their like brief statements. Kylie like stressing more so her social game to create bonds with majority of the cast to get to the end. Like she had votes against her, but she was always on the right side of the vote. And I will say on record, like she, I believe, is the first person in our seasons to actually have a perfect voting record every single time. She went to 10 tribal councils, I believe, and she voted correctly every single time. And she wasn't a tag along in most of those votes. She was a spearhead for a lot of those votes. Yep. So I give her a ton of credit there, just on the back end of this, knowing that she's a 0 vote finalist. I still want to give her kudos and her flowers for the game that she played. For just being a Survivor fan, not knowing anything about orgs. She found us through the specialists, Phil and Alexa put a post out for us for when we were looking, and she signed up for that. So just being a Survivor fan, no touch to the org community, comes in and outside some faulty internet connections from time to time, plays a very strong game.
Yeah, Kylie could absolutely win a game. If she continues to play orgs, she will absolutely win a game. I feel very confident about that.
There's tiny things that she could improve on, but they're the type of things that you can improve on, because there's some things that you can't, just knowing yourself, you'll never be able to do like X, Y, or Z. And someone said like, oh, you could win the game if you weren't a complete asshole all the time. And if you're someone who's just always an asshole all the time, like, sorry, I'm gonna be me. But
yeah, no, again, we keep saying it, broken record, but like I would love to see her play again, whether it's with us or in a different org or anything. I think Kylie could be really successful. And she's another person I think could go far every time.
Yep. Then we go to Alanis. Alanis, I think, highlights her game very well for what it is, because it's the truth. I wanted to play a very loyal game, but I wanted to be compared with Maddie and Robbie. Maddie gets rock screwed or wheel screwed, and we lose her, and then I immediately lose Robbie at the merge, or like shortly after the merge. All this Sean erasure, but she loses Robbie. She loses Robbie very early. So then she's like, well, now I have to be adaptable. And so then I just had to start talking to more people. I'm able to like get into these voting blocks and make my way through. And that here I am. So, and I want immunity.
Yeah. I think the one of the best things about Alanis's game is that she was very self-aware. She knew where she stood pretty much the entire time, and then she just owned that game. It's like there's no point to get to the end and try to be kind of claiming that you did more or whatever. She really just like laid it out. She just said exactly how she played her game from her perspective, and she just owned it. And like she didn't try to fluff up more that she did more than what she actually did, and she didn't try to downplay things like some of the moves that she did make. She just spelled it out, and I think people really respected that. And she was a target at several votes. I think there were, I'm looking through this,
there was three
different tribal councils where she got votes. And, you know, that's tough to see your name come up there. And then how are you going to react to that? How are you going to bounce back? And she always played it so cool, calm. She was never, you know, angry about having gotten those votes. She was just like, all right, cool, we move on. And I thought she just had, she played a very under the radar game, but, you know, she kind of started to become more noticeable towards the end, which is really what you want. And I think she owned her game. And I think that it was really, the jury really respected it. And like, full disclosure, going into the final tribal council, like having experienced the season live as it happened, I didn't think Alanis would get that many votes. And then as I'm watching final tribal, I'm like, oh crap, like she might win this. She's doing a great job. And that's one of the reasons why I love this season so much, is that for me, it had the unexpected ending. of Alanis winning it, and she absolutely deserved it. She's a complete queen this season. You know, I thought it was really fun to watch her come into her own and play a very solid game.
Yeah, and it's not even so much like because I want to praise this like delicately,
Yeah.
because it's not that like Erik and Kylie were louder than Alanis, but they're more seen.
Yes.
They were more, at least from what I was hearing from all of you throughout while you were producing the game. Uh, everyone for the most part had an understanding of where Erik and Kylie were moving, what they were doing.
Yep.
Alanis was more like sort of in the background, which isn't a bad thing. Like I would honestly recommend more times than not, if you want to have like a winning game, start the game in the background and then
Yep.
allow yourself to come up. It's like if we want to equate it to like a current survivor, like it's very similar to an Erica. Like
Yeah.
just try to talk to people. You may lose some people here and there. Erica didn't lose like her allies, but she loses her allies, but she's still able to recover. She's able to be liked enough by Kylie to bring her in to that 4.
Yep.
And then she's able to work within that 4 to get herself to final 3. Like it's very fascinating here. So I want to again give the winner their kudos, which then leads us to our runner-up, Erik, describing his game. He also wanted to say like he played his social game, or he tried to be as social as possible, but it was mainly strategic as well. Always constantly trying to figure out how to downplay his threat level. When he needed to win challenges, he won them, and which I would agree. To some point, like I feel like he didn't necessarily need to win these in order to stay, but you never know.
Right.
So you get through that. He does do something that I don't like, and he apologizes to start off. And like, I'm sorry if like some people think that I may have played dirty, but like I just tried to be as upfront as I could be. Being upfront as I could be is great. Don't do the apology, because it gives people that are on the fence a reason to decide to not vote for you, because it sort of almost comes up as if you're not owning your game. And you do hear that from a Robbie and a Jon during the Finals Tribal Council, is like, we don't feel like you're owning it. Like, just own it and say this is what you're doing. And I think his nerves, honestly, for Erik in this game, of he wanted to do so well, he wanted to win the game, but he's also like just so nervous that anything he did was going to create this bigger target for him. And I would just like, my recommendation would just be like, if he does play again, I very hope, if it's with us or with someone, that he just takes into consideration. You don't have to just be like so blatant, but you can be a little like, have a little more confidence in what you did. Like, I don't believe he lacked self-confidence, but I think he could have had more of it. It's just so then if you're at Final Tribal Council, if you're stuttering a little bit and you're just like, I think it was my social game, but then you highlight a physical move. Like, there's little things here and there that he could tweak, but you know, he got a vote. He got to second place, and anyone in this final 3, I could see winning another game.
Yeah, that is really true. And you know, I do think Alanis had the strongest Final Tribal Council of the 3. I think that even if Erik had outperformed what he wound up doing, I still don't think it would have been enough for him to get the win. I don't think it relied entirely on the Final Tribal Council performance. I think there was also just the season-long perception of the players, and kind of how the jury saw the game play out, which is another thing, is that when you're at the Final Tribal Council, you really don't have the full picture of the season, even though you're the one who actually played the full season. Because there's so many, there's there's conversations that happen at Ponderosa. Not saying that there's jury collusion in any way, because I really don't believe that whatsoever.
No, I from my
you get
conversation,
to see more perspectives when people get voted out. You get to learn more perspectives of what they saw in the game, and I think that happens every season. And I think Erik maybe could have picked up a vote or two, but I don't know if it would have been enough to overcome Alanis's fantastic season-long solid game. And again, no discredit to Kylie and Erik. I thought they played really, really good strategic games, especially. But I think Alanis was a little bit more of that well-rounded player, had I think the stronger social game out of the 3. Physically, Erik certainly played a better game, but I feel like unless you just go full beast mode and win like a million challenges, like the physical component of the game is really more of just a mechanic to figuring out like who's going to be immune in a certain round, and it can shuffle things up. But I don't think arguing a physical game is going to really earn that much respect from a jury.
Right. And ultimately you need to understand who the jury is, because it's not something where you give that same speech to 20 different juries with different people in each jury, and they're all going to vote the same way because they're thinking the same way. Everyone's thinking differently. All of them have your own minds. So you need to rely on the relationships that you built throughout them and getting to know each individual. You need to sort of like piece together your speech, which again, for these minis, I give a little less, like, I'm less critical on them because they've been playing for 12 hours.
They don't have almost time to like, so
it's
they don't
past
have
midnight.
Come up with a speech really, because it's like Michael got voted out and then it was like, cool, final tribal council starting now. Like,
right,
you just have to go right into it. You have to be like quick on your feet. You have to have some impromptu ideas that you can kind of just come up with on the spot. And I really, that's where I think self-awareness in a mini really comes into play, because you have to know what's going on at every single moment so that you can just openly speak your game, which is, I think, what really helped Alanis. And maybe with Erik and Kylie, because they played together for so long and they both played strategically, and I don't really know if I think they had a hard time differentiating their games from each other, so that it just kind of looked like Alanis as that third party, as that outsider from a very strong duo. It was clearer to see her specific individual game moves than it was maybe a Kylie or an Erik.
Yeah, and I will also argue, and I'm not saying this is how you win the game 100% of the time, because it's not. At times in a final tribal council, it is easier to pitch your case to a jury when you don't have to have your foot on the back pedal.
Yeah.
Like, Alanis didn't have to have the concern of like really coddling anyone or like apologizing to anyone, because she was the person who was on the outs. She was the underdog who found her way in and then able to come out of it at the final three. Whereas Erik and Kylie were very obviously together. They were part of the people making the decisions early on in the game, having control. And when you have control, you have to understand that you're betraying people, you're taking people out, and they may have bitter feelings about it. They may feel slighted. They may feel like it wasn't your optimal move to take them out. And obviously there's bias there, because you're like, why would it ever be optimal to take me out of the game? You should just keep bringing me to the end and let me win. But we do get some highlights here throughout, when each juror has a time to talk. Like, obviously we have Robbie, who just like blatantly says like, Kylie, you say your social game was your best part. You spoke maybe 5 words to me, so you didn't have a social game. Which I'm gonna say Robbie's a great.
Kylie's defense here was great. She was like, I don't need to have a good social game with everyone. I need to have a good social game with enough people who would consider voting for me at the end, or to help.
And I think Robbie did respect that answer.
Yeah, you don't have to have a good social game with everyone. You really don't. You can't have a bad social game with everyone, but you don't need to have a good social game with everybody.
Right.
And I like Kylie's defense there.
Yeah. Like, do I agree 100% with everything Robbie said? No. But in the perspective of the game that you're playing, and I'm going to give this as a Robbie defense here, is in this game, Robbie was working with Alanis in terms of who got to the merge. He was working with Alanis. Kylie, not so much. Erik, not really at all. They didn't really even know each other. They weren't on any tribes in pre-merge together. So
Robbie's vote seemed very clear. Like, it made sense why he would vote for Alanis. That was
right. And also Kylie swapped out, so they didn't have enough time with each other. So only person that he truly understand the game that they were playing at the time that he left the game was Alanis. And 2 of the people that were spearheading removing him from the game were Kylie and Erik. So in that just basic logic right there, it's not even gameplay or anything. It's just like, you 2 took me out of the game, and the person that I was closely allied to, who then had no one after I left, somehow finds herself here,
Yep.
why wouldn't I vote for that?
Absolutely.
So there you go there. And again, we hear that Erik doesn't own what he does. And again, I think that's a quick fix for him if he ever were to play again.
Yep.
But yeah, Robbie continuing to be a character, love it. I like Jon's questions for everyone of like, Kylie, why didn't you try to vote out Alanis? Alanis, why didn't you vote out Kylie? Erik, you just said you were priding yourself on your strategic game, but you highlighted winning the Final Four immunity as your best move, which I also do believe Erik just got confused by the question.
Yeah, I agree. Because it was like, what do you think got you to the end? And he played it. It was a very literal answer of like, I won the final challenge. That's what got me to the end. But
right.
Like, it's a very unexciting answer for a jury.
But I love that he does bring up here the legacy advantage, because I think it did perk up some people's ears at that point. Be like, oh, if he did, this thing was real. And
I was
he
really
did have it, and he didn't need it. And he's like, I was able to keep it a secret, constantly just like lowering my threat level. And then with Alanis and Kylie, Kylie claims that, or they both sort of claim that it's just like Michael was the person that they both saw as someone who could gather more votes.
Which I don't know if we want to spend time talking about that. Michael's in the end. What happens? Well, and I guess I should say who if Michael's in the end, who is not in the end? And let's say the challenge plays out as normal. Erik wins, but for some reason, I know Michael voted for Kylie. Do we think that? Let's say, should we say? Well, let's say Alanis isn't there. Let's say it's an Erik, Kylie, Michael final three. Does Michael get the votes? Was he that jury threat that they should have been worried about?
I don't know. That's the thing with this group, because I don't know all the reasonings for why they voted for Alanis. So is the same does the same logic apply, and you just swap those people out, and then
the outsider who got to the end there kind of thing,
and then Erik doesn't get votes, and Alanis votes for Kylie, because you hear in the Victoria question, if it was a final two, she would have voted for Kylie over Erik.
Yep.
Erik votes for Alanis over Kylie, which that one I want to have more information on, because I think it's sort of a similar mindset of Danny, where it'd be like, well, if I was there, that means Kylie betrayed me,
right?
And I put too much trust in her, so I'm going to vote for the other one.
Right, exactly.
But that's something very interesting, though. I would love to hear from the jury on this, like sort of like be like, if it was like in the reunion, like, oh, raise your hands if which we do have a reunion recorded. You can go watch it. It's up now. Lauren and McKenna always do a fantastic job with those, with the cast. The other one I thought was important was the Danny question of, like, I know it's cliche, but I'm being selfish here. I want to know who actually owns the vote out for me. And Alanis says it was her, that she was in a room with Kylie. Alanis was the one who ultimately said the name, and Kylie went with it. Kylie and Erik both say it was Erik, and we hear both sides of it, so we don't really know the timetable. I would probably say that she was probably just agreeing with Alanis at the time, but then when Erik comes in and talks with her and also says, I think it needs to be Danny, and here's why, like that, like solidifies it. So it may be that Alanis said it first, which then you can get credit for. You said it first. But Erik can also get credit because he's the one who actually enforced it to happen, because it could have been very easy for them to be saying it, and then Michael comes and be like, oh, I want to vote out Alanis, and they all vote out Alanis instead.
Right. Do you think that, and maybe this is hopefully this is a question that was asked to Danny during the reunion. I have not had the chance to watch it yet, but do you think that Danny believed Alanis, that she was the one who got him out, so that's why he voted for her? Or do you think that he believed that it was Erik and Kylie, and like kind of like Erik's doing, and because of that he felt betrayed by Erik and then did not want to award him the vote? Like, how do you perceive Danny's vote? So
that's, it's like earlier I said, it's a trick question, because you don't know how the person's actually going to respond to it. It's like, do they actually want you to own it, or are they like, I want to know who owns it, so then I don't vote for that person? I think ultimately it didn't truly matter what the answer was. I think at that time he's not too far removed from getting voted out. He still is in this mindset of, I put too much trust in those two and they betrayed me. Alanis did what she needed to do. He
voted for Alanis, so Danny had that game sense that, you know, that she was someone that,
and he says it during the vote. As he's voting, he's like, I think I put too much trust in two of these people. So he votes for Alanis. So we get the closing statements, we get the votes. Alanis wins 6-1-0. Erik gets the 1 vote. Kylie's in 3rd place.
Yeah.
I think it was a good end to the season. I very much enjoyed watching the episodes for this. It was so fun. The cast was amazing. So many bright spots, so many characters, and just really so many people I want to see again.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I thought it was a really fun ending. I'm really, really happy for Alanis. I thought she crushed it there at the end. And I really do think I mentioned it before. I think she played such a solid game. And sometimes that's what it takes. You don't need to be doing crazy moves and backflips and winning every single thing or whatever, like leading the strategic vote every single time. She just played so solidly, and she absolutely deserves this win. I'm very happy to have her in the winner circle for a DCP game. She absolutely deserves it. And I'm thrilled for her, really, truly.
Yeah, I'm very thrilled for her. It was her first game ever. I'm thrilled for her father, Anthony. Shout out to Anthony.
I don't know Anthony, but I know that he's a friend of DCP, and so it was happy for the family. Yeah,
Anthony was supposed to be on, like, I think, like, at one point or another, but due to other circumstances had to, like, drop out of, like, 2 of our minis. They
both applied for this one.
They both applied for this season, and Anthony fell so that Alanis could fly. And I think, honestly, I think as her father, I think he has no regrets there, and is completely ecstatic for her and her win.
After the season ended, I remember, like, we finished recording. I think the cast hung out for like a little bit. We were all sitting there, and then Anthony, like, had popped his head in, and he was like, it was like proud father moment. It's really, really fun to watch. I think he was there supporting Alanis, like, all day. So that was just really amazing to see. Really, really kind of like the cherry on top of a really great story.
Yeah, we are a family show here. Well, I'm so sad we didn't have him pop in during the episode so that McKenna and Lauren could, like, have that probes moment of, like, so Alanis, this is your father. What's it like to have a dad?
Yeah, what's that father-daughter relationship like for you?
Like, you guys are hugging. What's that physical emotion that you're feeling?
It's like, it's not a brother-sister relationship. It's a father-daughter relationship. It's very different, like, yeah.
Oh, I tease, Jeff. I tease. But so with that, though, ultimately, and we could go 2 ways about this, Greg. So we're gonna, like, pitch this live here. So we're at the MVPs portion.
Yeah.
But my question is, do you want to split it up? Like, do you want to do MVPs for what was the 6th and 5th place boot episodes, and then one for the overall finale / season, or do you want to just do one for this whole batch?
Oh man, I think we split it up because 3 episodes is a lot, and I feel like there are probably 2 different MVP. At least in my mind, there are 2 different MVPs for each of the 2 different rounds.
Okay. Well, I'm going to let you go first for episodes 9 and 10. Yeah. So the Victoria boot and the Danny boot. Who is your MVP?
So the Victoria and Danny boot is tough. For me, it really is a toss-up between Kylie and Erik. Kylie, I think, played the stronger round at 9, really vocalizing that it had to be Victoria. I thought that Erik played a really good role in getting Danny out. I do believe. I'm gonna give it to Erik because I think that his decision to not play the legacy advantage was really, really smart. It may not have paid out for him at the end, but I was really impressed with that move in the moment. So I'm gonna give it to Erik.
And for the same reason, I'm going to give it to Kylie. I think Kylie also just, like, up to that point, I felt as a viewer just had, like, a stranglehold over the dictation of the game.
It's really true.
Literally, the Victoria boot is the who voted for me, and I need to get them out. Yep. Pulling her inner Rupert out. Who voted for me? But so I have to give it to her, but it would have been a very tight mix between with those 2 and Alanis, which then I'm going to go first for the finale. Yep. I am going to give it to Alanis. I think she pitched that final 4 round beautifully to paint that picture of why Michael needed to be the one who went. She gets to the end with the 2 people that she claims she wanted to get to the end with, and you can see it in the vote. She gets 6 votes. She's able to plead her case as an underdog and as someone who had to adapt in the game, gets that win. I have to give it to her.
Yeah, doubling down. It's hands down. It's Alanis. No question. She played the end of this game perfectly. Her final tribal council was really impressive. It was really solid. Can't say enough good things about how well she played the game. She really just literally closed it out perfectly. So it has to go to Alanis. Absolutely.
Well, that wraps up all of our MVPs, but for the results of the season.
I want to know. Like, I'm very curious.
Well,
to know, like, how this all plays out.
So in a 5-way tie for 5th place, we got Danny, John, Jordyn, Robbie, and Maddie, all with 1 MVP.
Very deserving.
So that leaves the only other people who got votes were the final 4 of the season. There's 2 people with 2 votes, and there's 2 people with 3 votes. So we're gonna have co-MVPs
of fun.
The season. So let's see if you've been paying attention, Greg, throughout the season of the recaps. Who do you think are the 2 people with 3?
I think the 2 people with 3 are probably, you know what? It might be Erik and Kylie.
Well, I can tell you, you are half right.
Okay, all right.
So the runner-ups with 2 votes apiece are Michael and Erik, which leaves our co-MVPs to be the ladies of the final 3,
absolutely,
Kylie and Alanis. It's very interesting how it always leads to the winner being the MVP at the end, but it's their story. So it almost seems fitting. But I'm glad that Kylie gets that tie there and that Erik and Michael are right beneath them because they are the end game.
Such a strong final 4.
Yeah, I love it. So congratulations to Kylie and Alanis. So Alanis, you don't only just win the game, but you also win a co-MVP honors with Kylie. That wraps up, though, everything Sahara Dunes for our recaps, but keep your eyes out for notifications for when the exit interviews drop for our final 4, I believe. We should be having those drop within the next week and a half. And soon we'll be airing our next long game, Monte Carlo. We'll have some familiar faces back for the recaps. We'll be having Lilly back with the exits. Episodes will still be dropping on Mondays and Thursdays with exit interviews in between, and our recaps, as always, on Sunday nights. That's it on my end. Greg, tell them where they can find us.
Oh man, come find us all over the internet. Dynamic Character Productions on Facebook. I think that's our main hub for interaction and content. We're also on Instagram, DCP_org, as well as TikTok and Twitter, although we are more active on Facebook and then Instagram. I would say Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. I'm still trying to, I was never been a big TikTok or Twitter guy, so I'm trying to work on that a little bit. I get into little spurts of energy on those platforms. But yeah, definitely, I'd say I recommend following us on Facebook. Primarily, check us out on Instagram. We have some fun like questionnaires and like interactions during the season. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, stay tuned. Monte Carlo is going to be a great season. Plenty of new faces, maybe a couple of familiar faces, and also stay tuned for upcoming opportunities to play. We've got a fun game that we are closing out the the planning for, and that should be coming. I think we're going to be playing that one in the next month or so. So yeah, the application should be coming out soon, so keep your eyes peeled. Always looking for new players.
Yeah, always keep your eyes peeled, especially now. There's going to be some big news updates, big game updates coming in the near future. And remember, if you enjoyed this video, press that like. It helps with the algorithms so that we can get more eyes on our product. Press subscribe so that and click that bell for all notifications so that you know whenever new episodes drop of our recaps, our exit interviews, and any news updates for the channel itself. But with that, that's been Greg, our excellent production member, and me, Alex Trias. This is Dynamic Character Productions, and we will see you next season.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, everyone.